You know, to be quite honest, I am at the point where I'm low key tired of old school directors like Ridley Scott and Martin Scorsese bagging on Marvel movies. And I couldn't put into words exactly how I felt. But I really feel as though Stellan Skarsgard hit the nail on the head, essentially explaining the dislike that older directors have towards the Marvel Cinematic Universe or comic book movies in general. But I'm also going to take it a step further once I read exactly what he said. Now, the quote in question in his response to the criticism that people like Martin Scorsese and Ridley Scott have for superhero movies is this: I've got nothing against superhero movies. I've been in a couple and they definitely have a place. The problem is that the system that allows 8 people to own half of the wealth in the world enhances the power of the market forces. So small and independent cinemas really exist anymore outside a few big cities. There's no distribution channels for all the mid-budget films that have the best actors, the best writing, because they can't throw up $3 million for a marketing campaign. When cinemas let them in, they do so for 1 week, and if it doesn't pay off in a week, they're gone. Remember that The Godfather opened to 100 cinemas in the United States. Big films now open in 4,000. They had small ads in the New York Times, but it grew and grew because it was such a good film. The people's opinion has no chance anymore. And that is sad. I think that we should have Marvel films and more roller coaster films. We should have other films too. And that's the sad thing. When raw market forces come in, studios start being run by companies that don't care if they're dealing in films or toothpaste so long as they get their 10% return. When AT&T took over Time Warner, it immediately told HBO to become lighter and more commercial. They were always making money, but not enough for an investment. So, essentially what Stellan is saying here is that for the MCU and superhero films in general, when these films come out, they have ridiculously gigantic marketing budgets. If, let's say, Avengers Endgame cost $250 million to make, which is probably low. I feel as though it definitely costs way more. But if it costs $250 million to make, then on top of that $250 million is probably another $50 million dedicated towards marketing, where you're seeing billboards in Times Squares, commercials for it, ad spaces on websites, ads on Twitter, ads on Twitch, ads on YouTube, just ads everywhere telling you to come and check out Avengers Endgame. When you have something along the lines of, let's say, The Green Knight, or that movie that just came out with Adam Driver and Matt. There's so many fucking Matts in Hollywood, but the Matt that I don't like, they didn't do good. And the reasons why they didn't do good is essentially because they don't have 5, 10, $15 million to throw into marketing. Essentially, a movie like that needs to become big because of word of mouth. Think of a movie like Moonlight. Moonlight was a really small project. Probably didn't even cost more than like $5 million to make. But off of the back of word of mouth and people going around saying that this movie is really fucking good, people went out and they watched the movie. The Marvel Cinematic Universe started off the exact same way. The very first Iron Man movie, people were hyped for the first Iron Man movie. But once the movie came out and people realized it was good, people went home and they talked to their friends and they talked to their families. And then these people went in and they watched the movie. And as a direct result, a movie on a really small budget was able to make a ridiculous amount of money, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe was able to start going. We are working in a space now where the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the MCU, they can do that because they've been successful at doing it for so long. What Ridley Scott and all these other old directors are essentially complaining about is that essentially they're being boxed out. People would prefer to go to the movie theater to watch a Marvel movie than they would their movie. My response to that is people would probably enjoy going to see your movie if it didn't suck. Because if I sit down and I look at the last couple movies that Ridley Scott has put forward, I've liked none of them. The last Martin Scorsese movie that I really, really enjoyed, that is close and dear to my heart, is The Departed. Most of his other movies really have never gotten back up, for me personally, have never gotten back up to the tier that The Departed basically left. The Departed was like the pinnacle. Like that's the top of the mountain. When I think of a Martin Scorsese movie, I think of The Departed, and that is up here. When I think of Ridley Scott, I think of Aliens or The Thing. His last Alien movie was bad. Most of his other movies that he's put out or he's produced have just been okay. Like, I watched it once, probably not going to get me to sit down and watch it again. These type of movies don't get people to come back and essentially watch your movie again in theaters. Now, some people would say, because it is a valid strategy, if you pay attention to the time in which these directors come out with something negative to say towards Marvel, it's always right before or during the time in which one of their movies is out. Because negative press is good press. Bad press typically gets a lot more clicks than good press. Essentially, they can come out and they can bash Marvel, because you ever notice that they don't ever like really sit down and break down like a comprehensive reason as to why they don't exactly like Marvel or the MCU. They're like, oh, it's popcorn movies, and you know, these movies are for stupid people, and it's, you know, come and watch our movie because our movie is better. Well, okay, prove it. Like, put your movie out, let's see how your movie does, let's see what the critics are saying, let me sit down and watch it, and if your movie sucks, I'm never going to see it again. And if somebody asks me whether or not your movie is good, I'm going to tell them the truth. The problem is, you look at some of these more indie movies, and you currently look at the market that we're in right now, dealing with the pandemic and the fact that there are less people going to movie theaters now than there were when Avengers Endgame comes out. People are really only going to the movie theater to see big budget movies like Shang-Chi or Eternals. They're really not going to risk going to the movie theaters to watch The Last Knight or The Green Knight. They did go and watch Dune, which is good. They definitely went to go and see the last 007 movie because it's Daniel Craig's last outing as James Bond. But they're not going to go and see these smaller indie films. And I feel as though these indie films are definitely going to be taking a hit over the next few years, since it looks as though we are dealing with another variant that is deadly, that people are still not going to be going to the movie theaters. And I think that indie developers need to start moving away from this idea of releasing their movies in theaters and start embracing streaming services. Like, create your vision for Netflix or Amazon Prime or HBO Max. Create your vision there. Like, carve out your chunk there. Get your money paid up front. Pay your actors up front, developing for these people, where your movie can debut at #1 on Netflix, get ridiculous amounts of coverage, like Squid Games, where people are out there recreating Squid Games for fun like Mr. Beast, and Netflix is more than willing to drop double the amount of money into you producing your show again for season 2, or producing a second movie. Like, Martin Scorsese and some of these old directors are essentially locked into this weird idea that big cinema is always going to be big. No, big cinema is now morphing into this thing where you have to be big in order to exist in that space. You can get lucky and be a small guy and have word of mouth. And when I say word of mouth, it's no longer me just talking to somebody, but it's retweets and it's videos and it's things along those lines, pictures on Instagram, yada, 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 shared between people, where people who weren't interested in something become interested in it, and then they go to the movie theater to see it. But with the current market, the way in which it is, I think these old directors really need to realize that that shit ain't working no more, chief. You're really gonna have to find a new strategy, because people are really only going out to theaters to see big movies. Essentially, all of my friends are like, I'm only risking it if it's like a Marvel movie, or if it's like something that I really want to see. if it's like if it's like a Martin Scorsese movie, or if it's something else that's like really small, it's like, I can wait for it to come out on DVD. And I know that pisses them off, but that's just the way in which the market is right now. So stop with the whole bashing Marvel fan shit. Stop with the whole, Marvel movies are for idiots and they're just roller coasters / amusement parks. And yeah, yes, that's what those are. Marvel movies are amusement parks. They're movies where you can jump into the world, become a part of the world, ride through the world, have a shitload of fun, and then leave. A lot of people aren't looking to do like deep thought. They're looking to have fun. Movie theaters aren't in it. Movie theaters currently aren't in that space. You're just gonna have to like create a new space. And there are multiple digital platforms out there that are willing to give you that space. The problem is you're still using 8-track, sir. And we are now in a digital age. But that's just me. Maybe I'm tripping. Why is my mouse tripping? My mouse is officially bugging. It refuses to work, ladies and gentlemen. Wait, oh, nope. We're good.